This guy's here.
Hola.
Yes.
We're complaining about distances.
Complaining about distances?
Well,
That's very vague, Jarrett.
Well, okay. So
distances as in what? Like distances to shoot the ball on goal? Distances in the world that we live in? What?
Because
Okay.
Montreal is favored over Orlando this week in Montreal. We did the math. It is almost as long to go as the crow flies from Montreal.
Yeah.
Is this a cliffhanger?
Yeah, I guess so. What we figured it was the distance of Orlando to Montreal is a little. I think it's a little less than London to Moscow. So we know how folks overseas complain about flying from London to Moscow for international competitions, but you have a team in Major League Soccer who is in Central Florida that has to end up, and they have to go to Montreal and play this week. So there you go.
Yeah, what about when they go to Seattle? I mean,
I know. Yeah, we mentioned that one too. Like 3,000 miles.
Miami to Vancouver. That's a fun trip.
3,400 miles. We actually were asked about that one by Will. So 3,400 miles. So we were discussing the difficulty of winning on the road, especially where distance is applied.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's the major league in the world that is probably the hardest to win on the road because of that travel. I mean, that's part of it. It's just disruptive. I mean, I'm not like a world traveler or anything, but when we take a longer trip, I feel the effects of it. I couldn't imagine like playing these games and then having to be not just full of energy, not just being able to run 6 to 7 to 8 miles on the game, but to be able to do that and make the right decisions under pressure and be sharp with your first touch and all of those little things. It's tough. It's really difficult to go win on the road. And I mean, it's tough to win on the road anywhere, but it's tougher to win on the road in this league because of some of that. And then you start to get into altitude changes and climate changes and just, this league is getting better and better, and you can't just go out talent people on the road as easily as you used to be able to. So it's a fun league, but yeah, home teams have a huge advantage.
I think it's 2 out of 7 were road wins last year, 29%. So it'd be 2 out of every 7 road teams won last.
From what the numbers, I think it was through maybe last week or a couple weeks ago, it's even stronger home field advantage this year. And look, it's early, it could just be some of the matchups, but it's just tough. And that has to be factored in. You can't overreact to losses on the road, and teams have to find ways to grind out results on the road as well.
I know that you're multitasking this morning. How long do we have you?
I don't, if I stay awake, I've got time.
I was going to say bottom of the hour. Will that work?
I got a little bit longer than that, but yeah, not a whole lot.
Ooh, yes.
I am calling 2 more high school state championship games tonight up at Duluth High School. I've had an overtime game to close out the night every night this week. Had a ridiculous overtime game last night. I'm surprised my voice is functioning this morning after yelling like I did. It was a great goal from Dalton and a great win for them. But yeah, 2 games tonight, then fly down to Miami, Fort Lauderdale in the afternoon on Saturday, do that game, come back with the team, and then NPSL, Georgia Storm Sunday over in Carrollton.
Yeah, so the NPSL season kicks off, and we've got USLW coming up around the corner, too. They start a little bit this weekend, but they start more in earnest next weekend. But
WPSL starting soon, USL League 2, everything is happening right now.
So let's focus on, and by the way, for those of you that did not get to hear or see the call from Jason last night with Dalton and in Midtown, it is on the Twitters. So keep an eye on that. Very, very cool call.
Yeah, if you have a subscription to NFHS, it's worth it this time of year for sure anyway. And the game last night is worth a watch. Like, it was that good. Full credit to Midtown. I didn't think they were going to get through this far. Saw them in the round of 16. They were facing McIntosh in the next round. McIntosh had been number 1 all year long across all classifications. McIntosh beat Dalton earlier in the year in a game we had. And Midtown found a way through that, found a way through the semifinal. and they were toe-to-toe with Dalton all night. Started having some injuries late in that, started cramping up. I think fatigue set in. 22 games in a short period of time, it's a lot, and it adds up for these players. But great game both ways. Great atmosphere. I mean, the line was down the road trying to get in right before kickoff. People were like hanging around the booth to listen to Jess and I yell about this game. It was super cool. People kept coming up during the breaks and talking about things that were going on. I mean, it was one of the coolest atmospheres that I've seen for a local game, and the game lived up to it. It was a great game, great goal to open it for Dalton. They end up winning 2-0, and we'll see if the 7As can match it tonight.
Yep, we certainly will. All right, so let's get into Atlanta and Inter Miami down at DRVP&K on Saturday night.
What are you calling this place?
Well, there's no vowel, so it's DRVP&K.
No.
Literally, that's what the sponsor is.
It's not what the sponsor is. It's
Drive
Pink Stadium. Don't be silly.
But they call it DRVP&K. That's what the letters that are there outside the stadium. There's no vowels.
They tell you how to pronounce it, John. Pronounce it properly. It is a good cause, the Drive Pink cause. It is very good. So show proper respect.
It is. It is a good cause. So
even if they're in Fort Lauderdale, show proper respect.
That is true. So when you look at...
Not my fault. They don't know what geography is.
No, they know where geography is. They just couldn't build the stadium in Miami yet.
That is true.
They are working on that, though.
Yes.
They are.
So, when you looked at practice this week, when you've had the chance to kind of keep an eye on things, when you haven't been doing high school, what are some of your takeaways from 30,000 feet heading into the match?
I mean, you've got to be better in the attacking half. And I thought we saw better in Nashville, but not quite good enough against a really good team at home in Nashville SC. And I feel like that game's closer than a 3-1 score line. It could have went really either way. But you've got to be sharper in those moments. And that's what this game, and when you look at the absences that Miami has in that midfield with no Gregory, no Jean Mota, that's a midfield that you should feel like you can attack and play through. It's kind of the inverse that we've seen from some matchups this season where you look at the opponent and you're like, okay, I think Brooks Lennon can get around on the outside pretty well. Not going to be easy for him in this one. I think the fullbacks for Miami are very good. Franco Negri, a veteran from the Argentine League. DeAndre Yedlin, obviously, U.S. men's national team, World Cup player. You're not going to have a ton of joy out there. I think, Brooks Lennon can go against anybody in this league, in my opinion. But your soft spot in the Miami team is probably going to be in that midfield because they've had another injury in the midfield. And it's a huge challenge for Phil Neville. Talk about injuries. We talked about it all last year. It's very disruptive to the way a team wants to play. And when you lose both of your holding midfielders, it's extremely disruptive because that sets the tone for your team. So how Phil Neville solves that is going to go a long way into this game. Does he bring on a Victor Ulloa, who it doesn't seem like he really rates? He might have to here. Dixon Arroyo is young. I mean, is young to the team. He's new into this group. He's going to have to become a leader immediately. You've got to get somebody to support more because Arroyo and Kremaski had a great game in Columbus. He's not really going to sit back and defend, and you don't want him to. They're going to need somebody else there with the threat that Atlanta can present. And I feel like this is a game not just for Thiago Almada, because every game's for Thiago Almada. I think this is a game where if it's Mateus Hosatu, if it's Amar Sejdic, whoever the 8 is, has to really, really push in the attacking half and try to pin Miami in, because I think you can have a huge advantage in Atlanta's 8 and 10, Almada and either Hosatu or Sejdic. My guess is Hosatu because I thought he played well in Nashville. Those two against Arroyo and I don't know who. Do they move McVeigh into the midfield? Do they play Ulloa? Do they do something else that's a little unexpected? Do they play 3 in the back as another way to try to cover for that? With that unknown, I think the 8 for Atlanta becomes really important in this one.
Jarrett, go for it.
Yeah, because I wanted to kind of get into, how do you attack when you don't have your midfield like that? Because against some teams, it feels like you might try and skip the midfield. And Atlanta's not really built for you to do that against them with Miles Robinson, who is having a hell of a prove-it year, and Juanjo Purata, who I know you talked about it this week, Jason, of how much he's changed the way this team deals with aerial balls on set pieces, but also with anyone's attempt to try and skip the midfield like that. And with the speed you have outside with Gutman and Lennon, assuming they don't get caught way up the field, that's like a counterattack. I'm thinking more like in possession for Miami. I do miss having a guy like Ibarra for a game like this to kind of break things up and trigger counters. But if Santi Sosa shows you what he did against Nashville, I mean, it feels like you should be in pretty good shape playing through that.
Yeah, look, I think Atlanta's going to dictate the play in this one because of these absences for Miami, and you just don't have easy solutions if you're Miami. Do you go 5-3-2, 3-5-2, get an extra center back in, be secure? That's really a move you'd more easily do on the road. But do you say, all right, Joseph Martinez, this is the game that everybody circled down. This is the emotional matchup, so you're going to start next to Campana. I don't think they would have done that if the injuries don't happen. Maybe that becomes more of an option. I mean, Leo Campana had a great match in Columbus. I think he's your guy as the number 9. But do you go 2 up top just because you don't know how to solve it? I don't think Miami's going to play direct. I don't see them doing that. Do I see them potentially not having possession in this game? Yeah, absolutely. But their strength will be out wide. And that's where if you're going to look to skip the midfield, it's not going to be down the middle looking for knockdowns. I think it's going to be a little bit more of build up through the flanks. It's Yedlin, it's Negri carrying the ball out of the back and trying to get there before finding Kremaski in and around the penalty area, the attacking third. They're going to have to play through the youngster Kremaski. You're going to have to rely on him in some of these situations, but you're not going to be able, unless, again, they go in a little bit of a surprising option in the midfield and maybe do try to get more on the ball. Uyo is a good ball-playing central midfielder, so I think they can build up through him. He's just not sharp right now. But I think you're going to have to find Kremaski in other ways, and I think it's probably going to be a build-up through the flanks. Now, when they do that, if they do that, Atlanta's got to use the touchline as an extra defender and trap up against the touchline and try to prevent them from bringing it inside. I think if you deny Kremaski, you really take a lot away from Miami in this game. And then they're playing for more set pieces and counters and things like that.
On the Atlanta attack side, no Giacomakis this match, and I know that a lot of folks were trying to sit there and come up with combinations and permutations of how it was going to look up top. When you look at how things would go against the attack for Atlanta United, what are you kind of seeing? And what have you seen over the last handful of weeks with personnel, and what are you anticipating maybe in this one?
Well, I don't know why there'd be a lot of conversation about combinations here. I mean, you're going to play another number 9, and I think everything else stays the same. I don't think you're going to change the rest of it because of one absence. Yeah. So it's who plays up as a 9. Is it Chol? Is it Barry? I'd lean to Chol. I think he gives you a little more upside in that situation. He's going to make more runs in behind. He's got to do more of that. That's the biggest thing you miss when you don't have Giacomakis, is you're not getting that movement, creating space for others. And I think you started to find some ways around that in Nashville a little bit. And this was when Barry came on. Also, other pieces started to move around too. And Nashville had a 2-0 lead and probably took their foot off the gas just a little bit. But you've got to get the movement that Giacomakis creates. You've got to replicate that. To me, that's the number one thing that you miss when he's not in the team. Because when he makes those runs, it opens up space for Araujo to cut inside. It opens up space for Etienne to cut inside. It opens up the space for, whether they're cutting inside or they're staying out and the fullbacks are making the underlapping runs. It just creates space. And when you don't do that and the 9 drops, as I think Barry is prone to do, and it's just, look, it's his natural game. He's a good combination player. He wants the ball played into him. He wants to lay it off and then turn and go. That's good, and you can do that some. But I think this team is built best when that is option number 2, and option number 1 is to turn and go. Option number 1 for this team has to be play through Thiago Almada. you want Almada to have the space to be able to play. When the forward collapses down, you're bringing people into Almada's space on the ball where he can be dangerous. So you've got to have the forward as option one, make runs. Option two, and to mix it up sometimes, because you don't just do the same thing over and over again in a soccer match. Like, it's not robotic. It's not guys who are just listening to their coach, run, run, run. That's not how you play at this level. You have to be able to do different things. And the number 9 for Atlanta has to flip it, and to me, be more like Yorgos. Run, take the runs. No, you're not going to get service, but maybe half the time. Be selfless in that to create space for others. And that's what has to happen in this game, because it makes everybody else better, in my opinion. Araujo, Etienne have to be better in this game. They have to produce more in the final third. I think if they have more space to work in, they can. You know, you're not asking Almada to be World Cup winning Thiago Almada every single game, but yeah, this would be a game where it feels like the matchups really lend itself to he could have a nice day. Because I think he could have a lot of space to work in if the forward doesn't bring defenders into that space. And then Thiago's got to go find it elsewhere, and he will. And he's really good at that. And I think he did against Nashville. But you want him to find that space in a better part of the field. When he's got to drop deep to go find that space, it, again, can work. And Thiago's just a creative guy in a lot of different ways on the field. That's one of the biggest ones to me is he's creative in going to find space and make space. But you want that space to be made for him right there in the attack centrally and not have the 9 drop into the space.
Jarrett, what else is on your mind?
We saw it at the end. I know you're throwing stuff kind of against the wall at the end of the Nashville game. We've talked about how ascended to heaven it would have been if Juan Hoparata had scored as a 9 and how much it would have broken so many people's brains. The thing about that, though, was what Miguel Berry gave you out on the outside, not saying he's a winger outright, but when you talk about pulling guys out of shape, could it be where you see him drifting, not necessarily, if you can get him not drifting back into the space Almada's taking, but if you could get him, making those diagonal cuts, making those runs to the left or the right, as opposed to straight back or straight forward to try and open up the space as well? Is that something you could create?
Yeah, it's something you can build on. I thought Miguel looked really good out wide. It wasn't a traditional winger role, but it was something where it looked fresh. It looked good. And don't give anybody any ideas about Juan Hoparata starting as a 9 this game, please.
Oh, no,
I don't want anybody to think that's
it was fun for 10 minutes because you're chasing a goal.
It's what you do at the very end of a game, and it's something that, I've seen as far back in the game as I've been, where it's late in the game, we're out of options, big center back who's good in the air, go up top.
Yep.
That's what you do. It is the last roll of the dice.
And they were trying to get him the ball. God bless them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, when you do it, then you got to try to feed it. I mean, you're not going to try to build up combination play with him up as the 9. You're going to try to put crosses in and find him. Yeah, I mean, that would be part of the plan, I would think, is to, when you're talking, if Barry gets to start, is saying, hey, you found a lot of success out wide. If it's not natural, if it's not easy for you to turn and just run straight down the field or make the diagonal runs in behind, if that doesn't feel right, because look, these guys play by feel a lot, and you're gonna work on things in training because you want to make the feel be natural. That's why you replicate things. That's why you do lots of patterns in training. You're trying to make the things that you want become natural and just whatever. I can't talk anymore.
Replicated.
Yeah, whatever. When you want it to happen more often. Let's change it up.
There you go.
So you want that to happen, and you repeat these things in training to get there. That would be something that you can repeat. That would be something that you can sit there and say with Miguel, hey, if turning and running to the left isn't something that feels right to you making that run, and we've worked on it and it's not happening, this worked really well, and here's the video to prove it. Get to the right. If that's where it feels right for you when you turn and you can see everything the way you want and you're there, okay, make those runs to the right. Even if it's more of a square run, that's still going to create space by vacating that. And then it's how you fill the space. And I thought it was something that Gonzalo talked about this week. Positional play, and Gonzalo hasn't beating everybody over the head with the idea of positional play. And it's not talked about a lot, honestly, in Atlanta when we talk about this team, but this is a very positional play kind of team. Positional play, people will try to tell you wrong that it is about staying in a position. It is absolutely not. It is about exchanging positions. It is about making sure that positions are filled on the field, and it doesn't have to be the same person standing there. The days of drawing a circle on the field and saying, oh, you are the central midfielder, here's where you stand, those days are long gone. If you want to be a good team, they are anyway. It's not how the game works anymore. So when the forward makes a run, and let's say it's Barry, like Jarrett's talking about, let's say he goes more of the square run to the right. All right, so he leaves where you think the forward would be. He goes to the right. Well, that means that Lennon can't be in that same spot. Araujo can't be in that same spot. Does that mean that Barry goes outside and Araujo comes inside and makes a run through the middle? And then Miami defenders are like, wait a minute, which one do I go with? That's what you're trying to create. When your movement is short or it's not happening when others move, you don't get the exchange. You get crowded. What you want is the exchange. And what you want is something that we've seen actually quite a bit from Atlanta United this season. When someone goes, another player goes into that space or exploits the space that's created. Maybe not exactly right there, but you find that space that's been created. You want that to happen naturally. It's not something, I mean, you do, like I said, you work on patterns to try to get things to happen in a game, but you want these transitions to happen. And there's been multiple times, especially in buildup, that you've seen, I mean, Andrew Gutman tucking in as the third center back in buildup has been very natural for this team. Again, going back to, the old days of Atlanta United 7 years ago, it's not always going to be the six dropping between the center backs to build up. That was what you always did before. In 5, 6, 7 short years, the game is really evolving to where, hey, maybe sometimes that's going to be the left back or the right back tucking in. Maybe then sometimes the fullback's going to tuck into the midfield in front of the back line. As we saw with the twos against Philadelphia, you created a diamond against their two forwards who were pressing with your two center backs, a six, and the goalkeeper. And you played 4v2. And 4v2 is usually a really good way to play because you have two free people. So you create what happens in the game, and that's positional play. It's giving you a toolbox to say, okay, if this happens, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. But when player number 7 makes this move, then player number 8 has to make a corresponding move. That's positional play. And I think if you can go back to Barry and say, make those runs to the right, that looks good. It feels good for you, it looks like. Make those runs off to the right. Araujo, Lennon, you guys have to play off of that. If he gets there first, Luis can make like a looping run inside. Luis could go further up the field. You could overload that side. You could play direct to that side if Barry goes there and look for the knockdown. He becomes a wide target forward. Lennon can overlap Barry and Araujo comes inside. Lennon could underlap and make a diagonal run through the middle. All these things then become open for that. When you're stagnant, it's harder to make those movements that open up space because there's nowhere to go.
I was going to ask about the twos, and it's probably for both you and Jarrett, considering that it's a Miami weekend for Atlanta United. Atlanta United on Saturday. We'll get into broadcast plans before you go. And then on Sunday night, a little before 6:30 here on the network, it's Inter Miami CF2 and Atlanta United 2. What's it been like to see 3 wins on the spin with the win over Philadelphia last weekend?
They're in a really good spot right now. And I think Steve Cook has got this group hitting on all cylinders at the moment. And you're building confidence. I mean, that's the biggest thing to me is Vicente Reyes gets the opportunity to go with the first team for a week, comes back, has a clean sheet. Noah Cobb playing consistently. I thought he was very good in the Open Cup match, and I thought he was even better against Philadelphia. Efrain Morales playing the best at center back that I've ever seen him play. Nick Firmino's on another planet right now. You're getting good performances across the board, and it's not just, he's beating people off the dribble, he's scoring goals. Firmino is sacrificing his body to help the team build up. He's dropping in deep. Eric Lopez was doing a lot of that as the number 9 before he was injured. He gets hurt. Karim Tamimi comes into the team. He does a lot of that, gets his first pro goal. It's been really cool to see this group coming together. And now they go on the road and they face a young team in Miami. I think these last 2 games are a little more of what we expected in MLS Next Pro, with teams that are similar in terms of development. We've seen some teams in this league, and it's a better league than I thought it was going to be. First off, number one, like I didn't think the level would be quite as high as it is. And that seems to be the consensus around the league this year, especially with the new teams coming in from USL Championship. More teams have went for those veteran guys than I thought they would, which can serve a purpose. I mean, Miami in this situation, if they'd went down that road and you're signing 24, 25-year-old guys to your second team, the idea would be that if you have injuries like this, they step right in. Which, okay, if you're going to use it purely as a reserve team, cool. If you're going to use it as an extension of your academy in terms of development, those aren't the kind of guys you're going to go get typically. You want a few, and I think Fuad Adeniyi has been a prime example of that here, where he provides that leadership. You've got guys like Tiente and Twomasi who've been around the block a little bit and can help solidify a group. But the idea of MLS Next Pro to me is those young guys developing, whether that's Luke Brennan, whether that's Noah Cobb, whether it's David Mejia coming off the bench. It's those guys developing into potential MLS starters. So, and I think Atlanta's doing a really good job of that. Excited to see the game on Sunday. John will have it for you on the SDH network. And just excited to see the growth of this group and the really good play that we're seeing from this group as well.
All right, so your day starts with the Walton possible daily double, right?
Yeah, so 5 o'clock, it is girls 7A state championship game, Walton and Denmark from Duluth High School. I think that'll be a good crowd. I think the boys game at 7:30 will also be a good crowd. The Walton folks will hang around. Lambert comes down from Forsyth County. 2 powerhouses on the boys' side that face off at 7:30, and that'll finish off the GHSA state championships for me. 6A finals are over at McEachern if you're on that side of town and you're looking for games to go see.
Nobody likes McEachern.
Wow. That's just, geez, Jarrett. They're not playing, Jarrett. It's just a place. It's a stadium where games are going to be held.
Lassiter and River Ridge and Roswell and Marist.
That doesn't help.
Roswell's made a huge run as a 4 seed out of their region. Marist has been number 1 in 6A on the girls' side all year long. We've seen River Ridge. Recently, I saw them in their semifinal, watched it on NFHS against Riverwood. They got through in that on penalties. That was an upset. All kinds of really good games tonight on both sides of the northern metro area for you to go see.
Broadcast plans for you and Mike.
We are on at 7, 5 Stripes Countdown, 92.9 The Game, the Odyssey app, the Atlanta United app, 7:39 kickoff, and then full-time report for maybe 20 minutes or so before we hop on a plane and come back.
All right, go save your voice. You got a long weekend ahead of you, so just be safe, have fun, and
a long week, and then there's more.
Yes, so it's a long week, and then there's more. So go save what's left of your voice.
Bye.
Bye. There goes Jason.